All right, Vishal, I just want to say thank you again for taking the time to be able to read this out loud for me. Before you read, I want to know what you already know about some of the ideas in the text. I'm going to ask you a few questions to find out, okay?
Yeah.
All right, looking at the text, what do you think the author's going to talk about in this reading?
Malcolm X and his and how he learned. Yeah, how much he knows and how he learned. Yeah.
Okay. What do you know about Malcolm X before reading this?
He got shot 15 times.
Right. Anything else about Malcolm X?
Nope.
If I said that Malcolm X did a lot with civil rights, do you know what civil rights are?
Kind of.
Okay, what do you think civil rights are?
The civil rights is like, it's like something that freedoms people and how they protest just to get those rights.
All right. Now's your time to get to show me how you can read on your own. I want you to be able to make sure I remember all the things you do as a reader, so I'm going to take notes and record this. Since this is your time to show me who you are as a reader, I can't give you any hints or any help.
Okay.
If you come to a word you don't know, do your best and keep on going. Do you understand?
Yep.
When you are done reading, I'll ask you to retell what you read. I want you to be able to retell as much of the story you remember, just like I didn't hear you read it at all.
Okay.
After you tell me all you can about this selection, I'll ask you some questions. Do you have any questions?
Nope.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right, the first selection is Malcolm X.
It was because of my letters that I happened to stumble upon starting to acquire some kind of homemade education. It became increasingly frustrated at not being able to express what I wanted to convey in letters that I wrote, especially those to Mr. Elijah Muhammad. In the street, I had been the most accurate hustler out there. I had commanded attention when I was said something about now. But now, trying to write simple English, I not only wasn't accurate, I was even frustrational in how would I sound writing in slang. The way I would say it, something such as, "Look, Daddy, look, let me put your coat about a cat." Elijah Muhammad. Many who today hear me somewhere in person or on television, or those who read something I said, would think I went to school far beyond the 8th grade. This impression is due entirely to my prison studies. It had really begun back in the Charlestown prison when Bimmy first made me feel envy of his stock of knowledge. Bimmy had always taken charge of any conversation he was in, and I had tried to emulate him. But every book I picked up in few sentences which didn't contain anywhere from one to nearly all the words that might as well have been in Chinese. When I just skipped those words, of course I really ended up with little idea of what the book said, so I had come to the Norfolk prison colony. Still going through only books, reading motions, pretty soon I would have quit even these emotions unless I had received the motivation that I did. I saw that the best thing I could do was get hold of a dictionary to study, to learn some words that I was lucky enough to read, and also that I should try to improve my penmanship. It was sad I couldn't even write in a straight line. It was both ideas that moved me to request a dictionary along with some tablets and pencils from the Norfolk Prison County School. I spent 2 days just refilling uncertainly through the dictionary pages. I never realized so many words existed. I didn't know which words I needed to learn. Finally, just to start some kind of action, I began copying. In my slow, painstaking handwriting, I copied into my tablet everything printed on that first page down to the punctuation marks. I believe it took me a day. Then aloud, I read back to myself everything I read on the tablet. Over and over aloud to myself, I read my own handwriting. I woke up the next morning thinking about those words, immensely proud to realize that not only I had written so much at one time, but I written words that I never knew were in the world. Moreover, with a little effort, I always could remember what many of these words meant. I reviewed the words whose meanings I didn't remember. Funny thing, from the dictionary first page right now, that aardvark springs to my mind. The dictionary had a picture of it. A long tail, long ear, very African mammal, which lives of termites caught by sticking out its tongue as an interior does for ants. I was so fascinated that I went on. I copied the dictionary's next page, and the same experience came when I studied that. With every succeeding page, I also learned of people and places and events from history. Actually, the dictionary is like a miniature encyclopedia. Finally, the dictionaries of section had filled a whole tablet, and I went on to the bees. That was the way I started copying what eventually became the entire dictionary, and went a lot faster after so much practice. Helped me to pick up a handwriting speed between what I wrote in my tablet and writing letters. During the rest of my time in prison, I would guess I wrote a million words. I suppose it was inevitable that as my word base broadened, I could, for the first time, pick up a book and read, and now began to understand what the book was saying. Anyone who has read a great deal can imagine the new world that opened. Let me tell you something. From then until I left the prison, and every moment I had, if I was not reading in the library, I was reading on my bunk. You couldn't have gotten me out of books with a wedge. Between Mr. Muhammad's teaching, my correspondence, my victors, usually Ella and regional, and my reading of books, must pass without my even thinking about being in prison. In fact, up to then, I never had been so truly free in my life.
Okay, thanks. Now, what I want you to do is try to recall what you read, okay? And if you had to explain the story to a younger brother and sister, how would you go about retelling the story?
I would start by talking about how I would start talking about how he had troubles reading, so he changed prison schools, and he start reading the dictionary and writing down the words that he couldn't pronounce, and find a definition of it. And he kept on practicing and practicing until he got better at reading.
Right. So what was the selection mostly about?
Malcolm X and how he was able to learn from a dictionary page. From a dictionary.
How would you describe Malcolm X's early writing abilities?
Before he learned how to stop copying and poor, it was actually sad how he couldn't write, and he didn't know how to write, and he couldn't write in a straight line.
Do you recall why Malcolm X decided he should learn to write better?
Because he didn't, I think, I'm trying not to look at the paper. He tried not to be one of those people who didn't know how to read and write. But he started learning how to read.
Okay.
And write.
Before he went to prison, what was the highest grade of formal schooling that Malcolm X had completed?
Can you repeat that question?
Sure. Before he went to prison, what was the highest grade of school that Malcolm X had completed?
First through eighth.
Okay. All right, and last one. Before Malcolm X improved his reading skills, what did he do when he was reading and came to a word that he didn't know?
He will write it down, and he will try to summarize the dictionary. The definition. And he'll try to pronounce it, and keep on practicing on the word till he got it right.
Okay. All right, Vishon, we're gonna stop there. So again, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to be able to sit down with me and go over this.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.